So he just insulted my water drop noise. But I guess we could do the issue 3s now.
Yes, something like that.
So which one do you want to start with? Do you want to start with the big one, or do you want to leave that for last?
I
say we go in reverse order of importance.
Alright, so let's
Judged by Noah.
start with Dead Man.
Yep. Least important, judged by me. And that's not to say it's the worst, it's just the least biggest name. The smallest one.
I love that cover.
Yeah, forever. He's a fractal.
It makes no sense to
He's
me.
a fractal.
I don't understand math. I think we're getting into a lot of symbolism. Now, I didn't read Dead Man because I didn't really want to. Number one, actually, it's interesting, the ability to make the choice to read a comic or not. I might get to it down the line, but right now I just have no interest
I recommend that you do read it.
And why don't you tell both of us and the viewers about why that is?
Well, where Dead Man number 1 was a lot of kind of exposition and him telling, and I want to say Billy Babson, but that's not his name. Boston Brand, what's his name? Boston Brand. Boston Brand, yeah. That's not a good sign. I remember his Dead Man. Anyway, there was a lot of talking about that. Oh, this is way more action heavy. The majority of this comic is him kind of fighting his way through a bar where, like, you know, I think it'd be normal just sneaking into a bar. But the thing is, this is like a mystic bar, so people can see him and they don't want him intruding. So it's him kind of teleporting from body to body, trying to, like, just making this bar go into total disarray and discord, trying to get to someone at the basement of the bar who can tell him about his future.
See, that sounds really exciting.
It is really exciting.
Would you say the pace picks up a lot from number one?
It's incredibly fast. It's kind of like I guess it is kind of like a heist. Where he's not trying to steal anything, but he's breaking into this place he's not supposed to be and trying to get something out of it. And he has to go through all these guards and, like, just even the normal people there.
And his only power is the ability to possess people?
Yeah.
How would you... So, number one, do you think that it provided the exposition necessary
yes,
to
number one definitely
this one?
provided the exposition necessary, and it continues. The first page continues right from the last one of issue 1.
Would you say that from number 1 to this one, it was necessary to have that, like, really detailed expository issue 1 in order to get this?
Probably not as detailed, but it's good that we got it out of the way, because now we could just have, like, just the story. And not, like, go full force, which is exactly what it does as soon as we get, basically, out of, like, the third page in. We are going straight into the story of this issue, and it is a really fast-paced, exciting story.
So you're saying issue number 1 really doesn't reflect at all the type of story that issue number 2 is?
Probably not, but it needed to happen. And we get here, like, the first thing we do, because, of course, in issue 1 we're left with him in that person's body trying to make his life better.
Spoilers.
Well, so now we see exactly what he does, and he tries to get it over with as quick as possible because he is trying to break into this club or whatever. But we see that he is good at being Dead Man, I guess. He is good at helping people be happier. And then we just see him trying to zoom and heist his way into this bar by teleporting into other people's bodies. And he makes a lot of mistakes. Just to, like, in, like, a short... Like, he goes in, like, to one of the ushers, and some guy taps him on the shoulder, is like, hey, what are you doing? And then he just punches the guy in the face. Because he's like, I want to speak to your manager. And then another usher goes, he was our manager. It's like, he thought I would, anyway, the guy turns out to be... Anyway, it's hilarious.
So, would you say that...
I don't want to, like, spoil it.
Please don't. Would you recommend number 2?
I would recommend number 2.
To someone who didn't like number 1 even?
Yeah. Because it is kind of 2 different stories. This is not very exposition heavy at all.
This is actually a story.
This is actually a story. This is something, something is happening in this. It's interesting. It's fun just to see him race through this bar. And then at the end, we're left with, like, a good reason to keep on reading. There's a thing that happens.
We don't need to know what the thing is.
Yeah.
Things happen all the time. Sometimes they're best left unmentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder Woman.
Nah.
No, Wonder Woman.
Nah.
I have said Wonder Woman, so we are looking at Wonder Woman. I think that Wonder Woman is a very good example also of a number 1 not reflecting how the story is going to be progressing. Now, what was my main complaint with Number Woman number 1?
Too confusing.
Too confusing because you had a whole bunch of things going on and no idea what was what. And really hard to follow, really hard to keep track of. You had some really gruesome battles, which were interesting, but other than the fact that we've got a lady with a baby, and the baby's shaking its booties. Other than the fact that we've got a lady with a baby who everyone's after, there were a lot of details and backgrounds and jumping around from place to place that were really hard to follow. Wonder Woman #2 follows a very, very clear, concise, and simple storyline.
Yep.
Which is Wonder Woman takes Zola, the lady with the baby, to Themyscira, and then
People go after.
And Hera sends a certain other lady without a baby after her. I mean, and that, for the sake of this issue, is very easy to follow. And I think that most of the good things about #1 really shine through much more effectively in this. Although it's also, at the same time, a lot slower, but I think it needs that because...
I even think that the art is improved.
I'm sorry?
I think that the art is even improved in this issue.
Well, why don't we talk about it?
Okay. I complained in the first one how, like, the art didn't translate well from the cover, which they tried to copy the style of, to the actual book. And I think, I don't know what it was, maybe there's just less emotion in this comic for a lot of it. Yeah. But I just think that it's just better looking.
I think that the pace is a lot less frenetic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you definitely had that. And overall, we can get a better sense of... I'm not going to say who these characters are necessarily, because there's not really a lot of character development. Mm-hmm. But I think in terms of giving us...
Here's a good page. Like, just here, I think that they made the lines thicker or something. I'm not sure. I'm not an art person. But they did... I just think it looks better than, like, the battle in issue 1 did.
In terms of giving us backstory and in terms of giving us context, I think that this does a much better job. So, overall, while I would say that the story may not be really developed very, very far, I think that we're at a pace...
Funneled.
And we're at a point... Yeah, but I think we're at a point and a pace where I can follow it comfortably, and I'm not going to say I need more in order to be engaged.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and
it's engaged as it is right now.
It's actually interesting. And also, there are a lot of characters who are either referenced or who are appearing who are interesting because, again, I can now, in this issue, really get the sense of what Wonder Woman does and what it really is distinct for is that it takes Greek mythology and it puts it into not very much heroics involved. It's not Wonder Woman as a superhero. It's Wonder Woman as an Amazon. Mm-hmm. But overall... I think it's starting to tell an interesting story about you got a bunch of Greek gods, there's a lady with a baby, and people are not particularly happy with her.
Yeah.
So, overall, would you say you liked? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I'd recommend it. If you were on the fence about the first issue, I think this definitely clears up what this comic is going for and how it's going to be good, how it's going to be presented, and I think it's really good now. If they stick with this sort of pacing, I think, and... continue the story as it is.
Still not my favorite, but I would consider it's good. But I would consider it a big improvement over #1. And we still know from #1 the potential for action and battle and all that, which we might be seeing as time goes on.
So now, Green Lantern Corpse on the cover.
Haha,
he made that joke.
Yes, I said, look, it's a Green Lantern Corpse. But Green Lantern Corps is really directly following the story from #1. We've got someone going after...
Can we say what it is?
We can get to that in a second, I think. But he finds this to be very amusing, but overall this is not a particularly amusing story.
No.
As opposed to issue #1, we did a lot to set up with the dynamic between Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner and their roles on Earth. A lot of that really isn't being explored still, and a lot of it is just...
This is a lot more plot-driven.
It's a lot more... I'm not just going to say it's a lot more plot-driven, but I think it's really taking the focus off of Guy Gardner and Jon Stewart, even as they relate to the plot. I mean, they're kind of not very important as individuals to the plot overall. It's just that you have a planet of people who are causing some destruction and death and violence throughout the universe, the galaxy at least, and chopping off the fingers of certain Green Lanterns who they're killing, the ring fingers, and they need to fight these people and stop them from taking over and taking things and plundering from other planets. And it turns out, interestingly enough, and this isn't like a major plot point, but I'm going to say it's not a big spoiler plot point, but it turns out that from a first planet in the previous issue that was seen for maybe 3 pages, they stole all of that planet's water, and it was an undersea planet, and now they're apparently stealing the atmosphere of sorts from the second planet that they're attacking to bring it to their own planet and restore its beauty. It reminds me just a little bit.
The villains are the Spaceballs!
They're essentially the Spaceballs. So, I'm going to say, it sounds kind of silly that Green Lantern Corps has the same plot as Spaceballs.
But they play it seriously.
But they are playing it seriously, and that, it works.
Because it is a scary thing.
Premise.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I think this issue is kind of disappointing. I mean, I think half of it is a fight scene that doesn't really work very well for me because everything is just green.
Yeah.
And there's just so much green for page
and they
after
aren't really
page.
constructing anything. It's just them firing green lasers at each other.
I think that can work. I think green lasers can be really good, but I think that overall there's just so little context and so little other points. You just have like just green, green, green. I mean, there are things that are set up well, like this little panel with the faces and the hands, but overall it just goes on for pages. So it's an action scene that I don't think is particularly engaging, and
it's too flashy for its own good.
I think just too much light. Yeah.
And that's what I meant by flashy.
And
There's
also,
a pun.
I get it.
Okay.
And also, just in terms of character, a lot of the things that we started introducing about John Stewart
just
and
kind of
Guy
get
Gardner,
cut.
yeah, or at least not mentioned.
Yeah.
So, I think that it seems almost as though all of the character development was just an excuse to start this story.
Mm-hmm.
So, it might get better, but I do think it's a bit of a step down from number one.
Although it is Spaceballs.
It is Spaceballs.
It
definitely.
is Spaceballs.
So, what do you want to talk about now?
Nightwing!
Nightwing!
Nightwing gets laid.
Yeah, that does happen at one point. But beyond that, we have more of this crazy assassin who tried to kill him. His name is Psycho. And this issue, I think, is called Psycho Killer.
Yep.
Like that song.
It's a pun.
Almost.
It's a pun! Almost.
Anyway, overall, I found Nightwing number 2 to be pretty much on the same level as number 1. I mean, we're developing the plot further, but a lot of the questions that are asked in number 1 don't really get answered in number 2. There's this whole thing, Dick Grayson is apparently, like, the most dangerous killer in Gotham. We still don't know why, but we're developing further who's after him.
Although we get... A lot of this is more about the circus.
Yeah, a lot of it is... Because the plot in number 1, the circus is back in town, and now we're seeing a lot with Dick Grayson's relationship to certain people who are associated with the circus, including his childhood friend, as well as the owner of the circus. Haley, that's right.
Yeah.
Like the comet. But, so that's part of it. There's even, you can even see it's a, this is kind of an artistic cover because you can see they are actually fighting in a circus. You can see the tent in the background.
And they are, and I mean the fighting is, I think there's 1 or 2 fight scenes, but they're not that big.
But at the same time, I think that they're enough to continue.
They're enough to
carry
the action.
There are 2 plot threads or 2 main things. There's Nightwing's relationship to the circus, and there is an assassin trying to kill him.
And they might be related, maybe. It's kind of
they may converge at points, but and there's still this mystery that isn't really answered any further, but more questions are asked. So overall, I don't think there's much more to say about it than from Nightwing number 1. I think it's kind of continuing on the same.
If you like Nightwing number 1, then you'll like Nightwing number 2.
I think it's
and I happen to.
Yeah, it's definitely just carrying over from number 1 and continuing. I think if we got a little bit more answers, it might be a bit easier and more interesting to follow. But
we probably won't get answers at maybe issue 4.
I love that random guess, but yeah, I'm still going to be reading to see. So,
and the characters are again really good.
I would put it. Yeah,
and Dick Grayson is incredibly likable.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like in some of these comics, there's like one derp face per comic, and there's one face. I am sorry that Dick Grayson makes in this, and I will find it. I will find it because it is.
I think there it is.
Yeah, and I think this is not unlike the derp face that Batman makes in Batman number 1.
You mean Green Lantern?
No, Batman.
What?
Batman made one. Green Lantern did one too.
Yeah, Hal
it seems like every character gets a derp face. This is how do no, but how do I don't understand this. How do expressions like this get onto the page to be published? Do you think
even know. Like, what's the expression supposed to mean anyway?
I don't know.
It's just
I want to sleep with you, but I have to derp first. I get the sense that I can understand faces can be hard to draw, some expressions can be hard to convey.
But that's not even an expression.
But you think someone would say, all right, that's nice, try again. I mean, I don't think they were on that much of a deadline. It's things like that I have to wonder about.
Mm-hmm.
But again, overall, besides that one face, in terms of both art and story, pretty much continuing on the same level as number one.
So now, getting into the really big names, Batman. Na.
Yes. Now, all right. First, I do have to say, number one ended on like a really big cliffhanger.
Uh-huh.
That cliffhanger does not like lead to anything
No.
significant at all.
Not at all.
Almost like a.
It's almost a decoy.
It's almost like a psych cliffhanger.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, yeah, it turns out the killer is so and so. Yeah, not really. Never mind about that. It's
Yeah.
not important. So that
It gets hand waved.
it does.
Yeah.
It's or rather, it's like it's just psyching you out because
Uh-huh.
it makes sense as a plot point, but it's just not. The mystery unfolds here about how a certain person was killed in issue number one. We're talking
And
a lot.
why.
Yeah, we're looking a lot less at Batman's or Bruce Wayne's attempts to renovate Gotham in this, and we're focusing.
Although it is mentioned.
Yes, although we're focusing a lot more on the murder at the end of number one.
And this, just I think an important point to mention, that this comic takes place in medias res. Or begins in medias res.
Well, it doesn't
But not
begin.
in-
It actually begins. Well, yeah, it does. It
Yeah.
does begin in media res, but overall, it focuses a lot more on this murder mystery. It's getting into, again, the mystery aspect of Batman stories that makes them so appealing, and I'm not sure if there's really much to say about it. I think it continues at a decent pace. We're actually getting some looks at what's going on. Unlike Nightwing, where you had a lot of questions asked in number one that were completely not really answered at all and just sustained in number two.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this we're getting some answers to some of the questions in number one.
And then some new questions.
Well, they're leading to bigger questions.
Mm-hmm.
It does start with Bruce Wayne falling out of a window, getting attacked by assassins. So we know that something's going on. Scott Snyder has constantly been teasing about how we're looking at Gotham's dark underworld, not its underworld, but its dark secrets and its dark history that even Batman doesn't actually know about, even though he thought he did. And that really is what we're exploring here. It's still very much about Gotham City in elements. I think that number one did a lot more. It was much more about setting tone and setting a mood and giving the setting. I think here we're actually jumping into the story, and it's moving kind of slowly. It's not particularly action heavy, but it is a good detective story, and I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah.
So
and it does reach terminal velocity by the end.
yeah, it certainly does.
Yeah.
So it certainly does pick up, and there are, again, reasons to keep reading. So overall, I don't have a lot to say about Batman number two. It doesn't really introduce a lot more, but overall, I would say it's a good continuation from number one, and it actually is picking up the story and taking it.
There's a lot
pretty
more
far.
Bruce Wayne in this than there is Batman.
I think there's actually a little bit of both, I would say.
Yeah.
There is one action scene in the beginning that seems kind
Mhm.
of unnecessary, but okay, so moving on to...
The final issue that we got this week.
Is that the final one?
Yeah.
Oh, Justice League!
Number two!
Number two.
We come full circle.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
And, alright, I have to ask, I know that when we saw Justice League number one, when we read Justice League number one, there's the issue of the fact that only around two characters are really featured, Batman and Green Lantern. Then we get like one appearance of Superman in the last panel, and a little hint of Cyborg. Flash is in this one. That's about it.
Yeah. And then they have a big fight, and then a different fight happens.
My only problem with Justice League, it is moving so slowly.
There's a lot happening, but it's just not going anywhere. It's like it's like inflating, where you get a lot of this movement, but not a lot of this movement.
The other thing is, that I think we know that there are aliens leaving boxes all over the...
And we do find out what the boxes are.
Well, I do want to say, I think that we find aliens leaving boxes all over the planet, and we want to be like, okay, so what's going on with these boxes, and what's going to happen? But instead, in number one, for example, we've got Batman being like, I'm Batman, go away. And Green Lantern's like, oh, but I'm Green Lantern, and shut up, I don't like you, go away. Hey, let's go to Metropolis.
You're
okay.
a prick.
Yeah, you're a prick, whatever, I don't like you. And then, now that we get to number two, finally, okay, Superman showed up at the end of number one. Spoiler alert. Well, you can see him on the cover. But
Yeah.
Superman showed up at the end of number one. So now, alright, Superman's here. The plot's gonna pick up.
Well, yes.
Superman's like, I'm Superman and you're villains and I'm gonna kill you. And Haldron's like, hey, I'm gonna fight Superman now because he's Superman and he's trying to kill me. And Batman's like, I'm Batman. And then Superman's like, well, I need to keep killing you. And Green Lantern's like, hey, Flash, get over here. I'm with Batman. And Flash's like, he's real. And he's like, yeah, I know. And then
he's
it's like,
a tool.
And then Flash shows up and he's like, I'm gonna fight you, Superman. And Superman's like, yeah, I'm Superman. I can destroy you. And Flash is like, yeah, but I'm the Flash and I'm really fast. And he's like, yeah, but I'm Superman. They fight. They have a fight that does not need to happen. That contributes very little to the plot, and not even very much to characterization, to the entire first half of the issue. I'm not going to say that no plot points get addressed. They do.
And the dialogue isn't terrible.
The dialogue isn't terrible, but I think that the problem is that
it's too spectacular.
It's not even that it's too spectacular. It's that it's dragging along in terms of pacing, because we have all of these superheroes just bickering with each other.
No, I think
bickering and not communicating.
Like by spectacular, it's just like there's a lot going on, but it's meaningless. There's a lot of like this whole fight. It was interesting, but it's there's nothing happening. It doesn't mean anything.
It does mean things. It does set up the relationships to the characters and all of that. I don't think that it's bad. I just think that it goes on for too long and it's too drawn out in both of these issues. Just these conflicts between characters, because we see. Some aliens are leaving mysterious boxes all over the planet, and the government is like after the metahumans, and they don't trust them, and they don't call them heroes, and the metahumans are trying to figure out what's going on. That's an interesting story. I think we want to read that story. I think we want to see...
But the fight scene takes up too much of it.
No, I think we want to see these guys, whether they're the Justice League at this point or not, that doesn't matter. I think we just want to see them come together in some way. It could take a while. They could have... hesitation about it. They could be uncomfortable with it, but I think we want to see them in some way address this problem. Instead, we just get them arguing with each other in a way that isn't contributing much. And again, no Wonder Woman or Aquaman even at number 2.
But would you say that, like issue 1, the best part of this comic was the bit with Cyborg?
No.
No?
Again, Cyborg it seems like he appears in 3 pages in each comic. Again, there's only 2 so far. Not Flash. Flash is in this. They're not badly written. I mean, the characters are... Except Superman seems a bit...
He seems a bit brutish.
Yeah, no, Superman seems a bit like Superman in Action Comics.
Yeah.
Which is, I think because we're still in the past, maybe... I don't know, you'd think after 2 years he'd get to be more like Superman in Superman, which I liked. But, yeah, so Superman seems a bit off character, or off model in terms of character. Everyone else, I mean, the characters are there. We have plot seeds. There's just still not very much going on. I know that there's this whole question sometimes that people ask, oh, well, it's like, if Flash got into a fight with Superman, who would win? I mean, Superman versus so-and-so, Batman versus Green Lantern, what would happen? I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about. That type of thing could perhaps arise as part of a story at one point, but just having constantly all of these heroes before they've become the Justice League, just essentially bickering and arguing with each other, especially in this one, it's disappointing, because it's even just because of a misunderstanding. They don't even have a reason to be fighting. It's just that they haven't communicated, so they need to fight for 10 pages. I just think it's disappointing. I mean, again, I'm going to keep reading it to see if it gets anywhere, because, I mean...
This is the biggest issue of the reboot.
Perhaps. I mean, it is...
Well, it's the biggest series.
It is Justice League. I'm not going to say that it's offensively bad. I'm just going to say that it's not getting where it needs to be.
But, okay. Also, that's something that we should address at the last 5 pages, how much is it?
It's like 3.
Yeah, well, the last few pages is a transcript of a conversation that someone is having with somebody else. And
we could say who it is.
Okay, that Amanda Waller is having a conversation with Captain...
With Wonder Woman's friend.
Yeah. And
what was his name?
Steve Trevor. Captain Steve Trevor. And this probably has more story than the rest of the comic does.
And it's just little pieces.
Yeah, and it's a transcript. There are no pictures. And but there is a very interesting teaser or two, I'd say, in that.
Well, I mean, we're getting at different characters. I think one thing that this thing's doing a good job doing is setting up the kind of world we live in. We're getting this whole thing, the government doesn't trust our superheroes. The superheroes don't trust each other.
There's a lot of not trust.
And there's a threat coming from afar.
A big threat. They're starting off with some really big guns.
And it ends on a... I guess you could say it ends on a bang.
Yeah.
Perhaps it ends on a...
explosion.
Or, what's another onomatopoeia that we could use? Perhaps it ends on a bang. Perhaps it ends on a bit of a... Should I say it?
And
I'm not going to.
You want me to guess it?
You know what it's going to be. It's spelled out for an entire panel.
Yeah, I know what it is. Should we say it? Is it too big of a hint? I'll just say it. Boom.
It ends a bit on a boom.
Yeah.
But overall, I think while it's leading a lot into the next issue, and it probably could pick up, I think that a lot of the problems from number 1 are continued. So for number 1, I said I'm going to have to sit and wait and see what happens with number 2. For number 2, I'm going to kind of have to see what happens with number 3.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say it's not going to be a good series, but it's starting off very slowly.
I think that the ending of this issue is going to lead into something that might be very interesting.
It's a much better ending than number 1.
It is a much better ending. Again, the thing at the end with the transcript, very interesting. A lot of interesting hints. There's one in particular that I think we both enjoyed, but we're not going to spoil it.
So, we're going to have to see how that goes.
Yep.
Next week, I'm looking forward to see what happens with...
Next week? Well, what comes out next week?
Aquaman number 2.
Yeah,
we're going to see how that
well,
goes.
are we going to pick up All-Star Western number 2?
Yeah, we're going to pick up a lot of number 2s.
All-Star Western,
I still need to read... We still haven't read Birds of Prey or Blue Beetle number 2. We could probably...
Or Supergirl.
We'll see how those go. Those were ones that we were kind of on... Not Blue Beetle, not
Comic-Con was very expensive, and I couldn't pick up all the comics that came out. I'm very sorry.
Very sorry.
Yeah.
But overall, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week.
So, should we say what we're getting next week?
No.
No? We'll leave it a surprise then.
Yes, and that will be out probably 3 weeks from now. Alright, take care.
See you in December, folks.